process, but it's a very tech process. So, most processes and procedures and things like that are, okay, the HVCC, you can outsource it, you can have an appraisal desk. There's kind of ways around it that are relatively simple staffing. This is not. This is a total tech solution where it's something that is going to have to be dealt with. There's going to have to be procedures in place. I mean, you're going to have to do something, and it usually kind of involves the underwriting department, the post-closing department. The appraisal management company is going to be involved, as well as the form softwares are going to be involved in the handling and delivery of the file. Handled properly, and this is where we were kind of trying to put our lender clients kind of on the urge, is handled properly, you could actually get somewhat of a competitive advantage, at least in the mortgage lending space, because there's going to be a lot of people who really just, if they think it's not going to be that big a deal, it's going to be huge, because you got to think about the appraisal forms are changing, the definitions are changing, there's a lot of things changing, and it's something that, it's going to take an initial learning curve for both the appraiser side, the underwriter side, and the AMC side, but also is something that can prevent you from really delivering loans and closing loans if not dealt with properly. So you can't sell a loan to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac without this UCDP, and I can very easily see, especially if you're a correspondent, where you won't be able to sell the loan to the correspondent. So if you're correspondent for Wells Fargo, or if you're a correspondent for another lender, they're going to want this file, not want you to close it. And if you do close it in your own name without the UCDP successful submission report, you're going to have to buy it back, or they're just not going to accept it. So it could be a problem. So let's kind of go into some things. We're going to go into kind of an overview, kind of how we're handling this. Is just phase 2. It's getting to the point where we're actually starting to get some action on it, not just planning, which is exciting. But let's just go real quickly.
Hey, Brian, do you mind if I jump in for a moment? I forgot to mention something. Perfect. And to everyone listening today, just wanted to let you know that at the conclusion of all of our webinars, we allow for about 10 minutes for questions. However, if you do have a question at any point throughout the webinar, once Brian gets into the contents of the slides, if you note your chat section of your GoToWebinar toolbar here that you have to bring up to load the software, you can enter your question at the moment you think of it and submit it to us, and we will make sure that it is addressed during the question and answer section. So once again, thank you so much, and I'll let Brian go ahead and get started.
Okay, so important date. So September 1st, 2011 is when Wells Fargo will start accepting these UCDP XML forms. So essentially, it's not required yet. It's probably not going to be required it's not required by Fannie Mae until March 2012. However, Wells Fargo usually is a little ahead of the game, so they'll start accepting these with the report September 1st. Appraisers are supposed to begin using the new forms September 1st. So all appraisals with the inspection dates that are after September 1st, 2011, they're supposed to write it up with the new UCD forms. The software vendors like Alamode or ACI are working like madmen to try to make sure that everything's set up right, because essentially, and I have Alamode on my computer. I get updates almost every day as far as UCDP updates, with changing the forms and changing all this other stuff, because really it's something that it came on relatively quick. They're not 100% sure. Everyone's kind of got a different interpretation. Fannie Mae's changing their guidelines. I'm hearing some stuff from them about them loosening it up a little bit as far as how strict it's going to be when compared to the original data set. But basically, September 1st is when most lenders should be ready. So you've got a little less than a month, and December 1st is when, if any loan application after December 1st has to have the UCDP, and then March 19th, 2012 is if you're selling any loans after that, you have to use the UCDP with the loan, or Fannie Mae won't accept it. Appraisal reports after March must be submitted prior to delivery date, and it's just kind of, and these are all loans that an appraisal report is required. Here are the forms that they're going to initially roll out with the UCDP. So you have the 1004 to 1004C 1025, 1073, 1075, and 2055. You know, they're dealing with the main forms, and one of the reasons is because they've never really collected any data outside of the appraised value and the appraisal date. So you think about all the millions and millions and millions of transactions that Fannie Mae does, they've never had anything but that, and these kind of are the main, most commonly used, with the 1004 being by far the most commonly used. And they're going to start collecting all the data. Now, some forms, what is really changing? Forms are similar but slightly different. PDF portability is a first-generation report required. It's essentially a first-generation PDF is when you can select a PDF, okay, and you can copy the type font. It's typically a first generation. I know some underwriters, some companies have the habit of printing out the form, printing out the appraisal, marking it up, and then rescanning it into the whole file. That is going to be a thing of the past, because essentially you need the ability to have a first-generation PDF. Now, you may do that just from your way of reviewing the appraisal. However, that is something where the UCDP will not accept it because it takes away that electronic format of the PDF, where it goes from something that's essentially a first-generation PDF to a second-generation PDF, which is basically a scanned piece of paper. Standards and conditions, terms, and form data will be changed, and then some logistics on how the appraisal is handled. Now, that's a very simplified process. I mean, basically, the forms are going to be different. PDF portability, you're going to have to have first generation. Standards and terms and conditions are going to change, and then there's some logistics on how to handle the appraisal. That's not necessarily, it's much more complicated than that, but it's very simple too. What I don't want to do is overcomplicate it to make it sound more difficult than it is, but at the same time, I want to emphasize the fact that this is something that you're going to have to act on before, you know, the deadline, not something where you can do 2 days before. You're going to have your processes hammered out pretty quickly. What appraisers think, this is kind of the feedback we've been getting from appraisers. They will add consistency to the review, streamline the process, and then help prevent misinterpretation. Essentially, a lot of the problems is, you know, what is average, what is good, what is bad, what is, you know, renovated, what does all those mean? Now there's very specific definitions, and we actually have an implementation guide that we can email you if you just, we have our contact information after this, so you can email us and request the implementation guide as far as give you kind of step-by-step what you need to do, how you need to set it up, and all those types of things. From a lender standpoint, and essentially, from an appraiser standpoint, you're going to have a lot more consistency in that, you know, appraisers have different meaning for different things. So some say this is a good view, some say this is superior, some say this is average, all those types of things. That's going to be now defined. So you're going to have a lot more agreements with quality control. The appraisers will it'll be a lot faster to write up a report because you know exactly what to do. They'll streamline the process, a lot of the definitions and problems. So this is actually relatively good for the appraisal industry. Kind of difficult change, but again, relatively good. What will change for the underwriters? It'll be more of a code review instead of lots of acronyms to learn. We'll have to rely on technology to ensure appraisals are technically correct, which we'll go into a little bit with some examples. And then what you're comparing to will be different, meaning usually in the appraisal industry, before you were comparing everything to the subject. So if the subject's an average condition and the comparable is inferior or superior, then if it's superior, you would get a negative adjustment, and inferior, you get a positive adjustment. With the new definitions, essentially every comparable stands alone. So it's not inferior or superior to the subject. It's graded individually. So it's something, when I'll give you an example, it's something where your underwriters are going to have to start looking at things a little differently, where it's not similar, it's not, you know, a similar view. It's either the same view, which would be essentially the same grading of the view, or it's graded on its own, and it's not necessarily going to be better or different. It's just going to have to be interpreted for itself. So you're going to almost have to look at every comparable like the subject. Here's an example. So site area. citing areas less than 1 acre should be designated in the whole numbers only, and square feet for an area greater than an acre, it must be measured in acres, and would up to 2 decimals. A unit per measure should be indicated as SF or AC. So this is just a really simple example. So the right way for them to enter square footage in a site or area would be, 23,569 with no decimals, no periods, no commas, no nothing after it. For an acre would be 1.34 acres with 1.34 AC, no period, no nothing afterwards. The wrong way would be to enter it with the comma or enter it with acres spelled all the way out. So this is something when you're reviewing the report, this will be rejected. So if you submitted this to Fannie Mae, the report would get rejected, and you'd actually have to resubmit the file. Now this is kind of a big deal because you think about it from an underwriter's perspective, how are you going to go and make sure every little thing is correct? I mean, you have to literally go field by field, and there's all kind of acronyms and all these types of things. That's why relying on some type of automated review system is going to be the most important thing. Relying on some type of system that can check. Now, most form softwares, okay, like Alamode and ACI and all these types of things, most form softwares will have a checker so that the appraiser will check this to make sure that these things are done properly. However, that's not with all of them, and all of them aren't going to be 100% right. So you can have a situation where you're trying to submit a package to Fannie Mae, you submit this thing through the UCDP, gets a rejection, you've got to go back to the appraisal to get these little tiny things changed, or Fannie Mae won't buy the loan. So this is where something very small. Here's another example where the way the dates are formatted, so that they want the date to be a 2-month, 2-day, and then 4-year. If somebody put just 091-2011 or 9/1/2011, it again would get rejected. So this is something that is very, very simple, but yet something that has to be checked. This is why the automated way is the way to go. Estimation of tax year. So this is just another example, estimation of years. So if they wanted to estimate, like appraisers have 1948 plus or minus, estimated 42 years old, estimated 55 years old, plus minus, all that stuff. Now, if they're going to estimate, they got to put that little squiggly line there, and then they could put 1948 or 42 years old, which would mean it's like 2000, but the year 2000, so it's like years ago. But that's just an example. So again, the wrong way would be 1948 and then having the estimate or EST 42 years old. So this just gives you kind of an idea of the scope of things. Now again, simple but not easy to implement. So all these little things are have to be learned, and all these little things are going to have to be reviewed before the file is submitted. Now, automated, again, is the way to go. Doing this manually is going to be a pain in the butt. Here's some examples of the conditions things. So they're no longer, condition of the property, good, average, renovated, well-built, all those types of things. They have moved to definitions. Now, we're not going to go through all these just because I have a printout with all of them that you can read later, so there's no point of doing that. But this, you guys can see this, that it's now changed to a grading, where basically C1 is new, and then C6 is basically, fair condition or poor condition. So it goes all the way down a scale. Now, what's different than what most appraisers have done is now they're grading each comparable individually based on a definition, and you're grading the comparable based off a definition, and there's one set definition. So average, which was based on the market area, not necessarily based on the condition of the property. So something that's average in Beverly Hills, California, and something that's average in Seattle, Washington, and something that's average in, a very poor area, is all very different, yet they're still all average because it's average for the market area. Now this is not average for the market area. This is based on the sole condition of the property. So how is this property? Is it renovated? Is it in good condition? Has it been updated? Does it have any wear and tear? All these types of things now have to be kind of considered when writing up the report. And then reviewing the report, you're going to have to refer to these definitions to see if there's a difference. Meaning, if comparable number 1 is a C4, the subject's a C2, the comparable number 3 is a C5, and comparable number 4 is a C1, what's the difference and how should that be graded? Now, I came up with this kind of chart based on the definitions that kind of meet it. Now, this is not Fannie Mae. This is Brian Coester, so don't think this is not the end-all answer. But this kind of matches up based on the way that I interpreted it. So, C1 would be new because it means that essentially no one's ever lived there. C2 would be basically everything's new, but everything's been changed. C3 is in good condition. C4, C5 kind of meet the average. Now, C4 could be in a little good. So these three kind of, C3, C4, 3, 5 kind of merge together to a certain extent with the good and average, with C5 being like average minus and C3 being like average plus. But there's kind of a grouping here, and then fair, poor is obviously the C6. Some difference on how this is interpreted. So if you look at this as a kind of just a sample, if you look at the appraisal, you can see, okay, this has a residential view. So the view is residential. And then the appraiser put superior, similar, inferior. So that would no longer be the case, or the condition of the property. So it wouldn't be good, similar, inferior, or similar. It would be, this is a C2 condition. This is a C2 condition. This is a C4 condition. This is a C2. So each one is graded on its own, independently, and then everything's referred, everything's ranked by itself, and the appraiser is going to have to adjust. Because a lot of times, so here they're adjusting back to the subject. So if it's good, what's the subject? Good. Inferior compared to good. Similar compared to good. Superior compared to residential. Inferior compared to residential. I mean, it's just an example, but it's something that now you're going to have to grade them individually. Now, again, this is not in a UCDP compliant appraisal form. This is an example, but you got to get the point. Acronyms. So a lot of the acronyms are going to have to change. So I have a whole list of them. So instead of seeing residential view or something like that, you're going to see these, city street view. Instead of seeing residential or urban, you're going to see CTY STR. Now the issue is that you're going to have to manually review these to make sure these goes right if you don't have some type of automated review software, or if the appraiser who did it doesn't have some type of catch-all, which most vendors are going to build, but this is going to have to be checked because essentially, like Fannie Mae always says, we don't care how you get there as long as we get what we want. So they don't really care that you're going to have. They don't really care that you're going to have a manual review, or they don't really care that you have an automated review. They don't really care about any of this as long as you kind of get where they want you to go, which is having everything exactly the way they want. Now, I have a whole list. So I have this big list. There's like 50, 60 definitions that I'll send to you. But essentially, this just gives you an idea. Underwriters are going to have to underwrite to that. So instead of seeing, the basement, you're going to see the BAs. You're going to see, the condition rankings. The views are going to be, the codes and all this stuff. So a lot of this is just changing the codes. Not going to be that big a deal. Like bedroom is BR, bathroom is BA. I mean, everyone could have kind of came up with that. The more complicated ones are like the arm length, because somebody could put arm, and then somebody could, ARMLENGHT dot and shrink the font or something like that, and that would get rejected. That's the biggest issue, is the rejection of it, which would cause a major issue because then you wouldn't be able to settle up. Moving on to the Next one, form software companies playing catch up. The Mismo file will be embedded with the PDF. From my conversations with the people at Alamode, they're really kind of working around the clock on this, and it's something that is really kind of a big deal and something that they're paying a lot of attention to. We'll have uniform appraisal data set check before delivering file. In the idea that before the appraiser, this is just giving you what the form software companies are doing, before the appraiser delivers the file to them, most of them will have some type of compliance check. Very important. Now again, not 100%, they're going to be updating things like crazy, but something that's important. All these little things need to be checked. We're trying to get to the point where, again, this is just adding layers of kind of work to do, but it's something that does need to be addressed. Here's kind of just an example of kind of what the new things are going to look like, where you're going to have check boxes. This isn't the final version. This is just the kind of ones I had that were in a good format that I can show you that clearly showed the drop-downs. So the select view, describe beneficial, describe adverse. The view is going to be a check-down type deal. If you look here, you can see that it's checked down, so the condition, the renovation, is it good, the full bath, all that kind of stuff. So they'll just be able to kind of, as an appraiser, it's very similar. As an underwriter, it's very similar, but there's going to be some things that are just really quick check boxes. If you look here, you can see that there's now check boxes for drop downs so that the appraiser doesn't screw. Now, again, not all of the form softwares are like this. So appraiser could technically be UCDP compliant and not update their software, which a lot of them are doing, and then they would have to manually code this, whereas most of them are probably going to get the updates and use just kind of the drop-down thing. I'm going to streamline the process, but again, you got to think about the initial learning curve, changing it, all this kind of stuff, and then also the issue with the codes of making sure that everything meets up properly. You'll not know if an appraiser has updated the software because they essentially look the same. So this is what the appraiser sees. This is not what the 1004 looks like. The 1004 essentially looks the same as a PDF. So you're not seeing what the, when you write up the appraisal, the form looks different than when you see the final appraisal. It kind of all comes together. So it's something where you can say, okay, well, I can see, they'd have to do it. No, they don't have to. They can still use the same old 1004. They just have to manually enter the codes. And here's just, kind of example. Accessing the UCDP. So there's lenders, and then there's lenders designated agents, which could be a processing company, the processors, all those, appraisal management company, some type of third party that'll be uploading the appraisals and evaluating results, handling the SSR, successful submission reports, and then handling all the kind of coordinating of the stuff. Now, lenders could do this internally, but Fannie Mae has kind of sold the lender's agents scenario a lot, so it's something that the lender's agents will be a part of it. Kind of our process, and I hope everyone can see that. I have a PDF of this. How we're handling it for our lenders is really going to be a very simple kind of process where we're set up on a uniform data portal now. So essentially, all they would have to do is get their username and password, set up Coester as a lender's agent, confirm the connection, which we have kind of a step process. When they order the appraisal, if they order it through their DU, they'll essentially say, 1004 is required. Then appraisal registration number will be generated. That'll get sent to us with the order, process the order. Then we'll screen it for the UAD compliance, deliver to client and UCDP at the same time, so you guys will get it, and then we'll deliver it to them, to both you guys. If it's a successful submission, then order's complete and we're over with. If there's a revision, like if the underwriter look at it and there's a revision, then we'll have to go back. If it's not, a successful submission the first time, then we'll have to go back and screen the appraisal again, revise the appraisal, all those types of things. We have a checklist here, which I will email to you guys if you ask me as far as how to get set up. So essentially, this is kind of the 12-step program of how to get your username and passwords from Fannie Mae, how to log in, how to set up a company as a lender's agent, all those types of things. Fairly simple, but something that we're trying to help this as soon as possible. So we had somebody, this like 2-page PDF looks really simple. Fannie Mae's document was about 200 pages, 250 pages we had to go through to just pull out the meat of, okay, here's exactly what you need to do to get this done, because whoever's written these things, it's so technical that you'd never figure out. So we kind of took those steps already, and then kind of trying to present a very concise format, a very crystal clear way of handling this thing, so that our lenders and our clients know exactly what to do. Now, if you wanted to do this on your own, it'd be kind of a similar thing where you'd have to add them and go to the portal and all those types of things. The portal is fairly simple to operate. It's not that complicated. Let me try to pull it up real quick. Yeah, so I mean it's a fairly simple, thing where you just log in, and lenders would look a little different, but basically it's just the account administration, and then you click, there's like an additional registration. So it's fairly simple, and then submitting the appraisals, you're going to have somebody do that and submit the appraisals. Now again, this is we have the ability to send these electronically, so we wouldn't really have to go to this portal, but this is what it looks like from a user interface standpoint. So everything that we would do would be handled behind the scenes, so we have a connection that we can just deliver these, but it's something that this is what the actual kind of portal looks like. There'd be a list of files here and all that kind of stuff. Okay, moving on. Questions. So that's pretty much, it kind of gives you an overview. You can email me, and I'll send you kind of all these, how we're handling it, the checklist, and then also the slides recorded. So you can look at the slides and online in about an hour, and then watch it again if not. So Crystal, you want to go ahead and open up the questions if we have any questions? I know kind of a lot to take in, so.
Sure. Thank you so much, Brian, for that great presentation in regards to what's to come for the UCDP. So right now, I think we're just going to give them another moment for people to get questions in. Obviously, you did a great job of explaining it. No one's asking anything yet. Are there any final words while we're waiting in regards to the UCDP at all that you have to add? No, that's about it. I think it's fairly simple, but it's not. It's something that you should probably not try to do on your own, just because of the risk. Meaning, it's something that you're going to have somebody who's familiar with looking at this. Your underwriters will have to be trained on it. I just gave you a very, 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 very kind of overview of it. There's going to have to be some really hands-on training as far as looking at the codes and all that kind of stuff, which we offer to our clients, and then that's pretty much it. It's fairly simple. I have, email. Just email me. It's bcoester, BCOESTER at coesterappraisals.com. Just email me if you want a copy of the material that I have, and then that's pretty much it. So. Perfect. Okay, great, Brian. You did a great job. It's pretty self-explanatory, so it looks like no one has any questions.
All right, thank you guys. You all have a great day.
Thank you all for attending. Have a great day. Bye-bye.